This is gonna be a shorter one. Episode 3 versus Episode 3. In this episode, Patricia calls over Mara and Amber just to see, Nina clean the mirror. Victor comes in, tells them off, and Nina proposes switching rooms to Victor, which he says no to. Later at breakfast, Amber and Jerome hint to Patricia that maybe Alfie's responsible for the writing, so then later Patricia beats him up with a pillow. Nina walks out of the house before everyone, supposedly to avoid everyone else, and meets an elderly lady claiming to be Sarah, who used to live in the house. But at the elderly home, she's being called Emily. Amber asks Meg if he wants to go to school together, and Meg gives her a bracelet as a gift. Mara walks in, and Meg still flirts with Mara in front of Amber, and basically makes his own girlfriend third wheel them. Patricia tries to pressure Mr. Sweet for answers. Outside of his office, she notices Joy missing on the class photo. Patricia is sure that Joy was there on that day. Mara doubts that and says that it was a whole 18 months ago. Meanwhile, Sarah gives Nina the locket and tells her about the treasure hidden in the house and the dangers of it. Nina that same day has nightmares involving Sarah, Victor, and the bird. Patricia throws black feathers from some feather boa onto Nina, saying that she woke her up by talking in her sleep. Nina realizes that the locket is the locket and opens it, revealing the same portrait as she saw in the attic. And that's the end of episode 3 of HoA. This is a bit of a weird sum, as we've only covered one episode of one of the series since last time. I'm sure we'll have more of these later, but the reason for this is that the main event in episode 2 of HoA was in the middle of episode 3 of HHA, and the end of episode 3 of HoA lines up with the end of episode 3 of HHA. Again, I will try to mix and match as much as I can and compare things even if they are episodes away, as long as they feel like equivalents to each other. In HoA, Amber tags along to look at the message on the mirror, while in HHA only Mara goes with Patricia. The mirror scene in HoA ends with Victor scolding the girls for not being in their rooms yet, while in HHA, Victor is nowhere to be seen. This also means that Yankin doesn't propose switching rooms, but she was with Amber anyways. There are a few HHA scenes that seem to be missing from HoA, but could appear in later episodes, such as the scenes where Mara proposes to have a party, which also establishes that there's a day in a week when Victor isn't around. The scenes with Nyanka and her grandmother are not adapted into HoA since Nina's grandmother is not even in the same country as her. The scenes of morning shenanigans, which might establish another rule, or perhaps just Victor's spontaneity. Near the end of the third episode, Patricia from HHA gets Alpi involved in a prank on Nyanke, which doesn't happen in HoA. Nyanke is visiting her grandmother, while Nina is going to school early to avoid the main cast. In the scene where Patricia talks to the cast about her suspicions, and in HoA worries, different people are present. In the HHA scene, there's Patricia, Fabian, Jerome, and Alpi at the table, while Mara, Mick, and Amber are sitting on the sofas. In the HoA scene, there's Patricia, Fabian, Mara, Jerome, and Amber sitting at the table, which means some members of the cast are missing. Is this a nitpick? Yes. Do I care? No. In HHA, no one except Mara knows of the mirror incident until Patricia talks about it. But in HoA, strangely, everyone already knows everything about it. In HHA, Patricia tries to persuade Fabian to figure out what's the deal with Nyanke, which doesn't take place in HoA. As Nina doesn't really have an on-screen grandmother, she finds Sarah, a possibly insane elderly lady that gives her the spooks, outside of school, as she says, although it looks more like outside of the House of Anubis. Nyenke, on the other hand, meets the elderly lady at her grandma's nursing home after she takes note of the painting. We are not giving the name of the elderly lady in HHA in the third episode, but we are given two different names of the elderly lady in HoA, those names being Sarah and Emily. While both elderly ladies warn the protagonist, Nina gets a locket straight away, but Nyenke doesn't and interacts with the woman much less. That means that Nyenke doesn't know that there is any sort of treasure in the House of Anubis and isn't set on any mission of protecting it as Nina does in this episode. In HoA, Patricia sees it as a possibility that Alfie could have pranked her, which then turns into her trying to get the truth beat out of him with a pillow. In HHA, no such thing takes place and Patricia never suspects that it was a prank. In HoA, there are also additional scenes that do not appear in episode 3 of HHA, but since I'm watching everything as I'm writing it, they might appear later in the episodes. Some scenes between Amber, Mick and Mara are not there. Mick doesn't give Amber her present in the third episode of HHA. Amber doesn't make ground rules for Mara concerning Mick. Patricia doesn't confront the teacher in episode 3 of HHA and doesn't take note of the school picture. In Nina's nightmare, Victor appears with his bird, which is not the case for Nyenke's nightmare. Nyenke has white feathers falling down on her, while in Nina's case there are black feathers. We are not shown yet the deal with the feathers in episode 3 of HHA, but we are shown in HoA what it was, who did it, and why. Since Nina has the locket and Nyenke doesn't, we see Nina open it at the end of the episode, but the HHA episode ends with just the feathers, with no possibility of Nyenke opening the locket, as she hasn't received it yet. This is slowly becoming more of a jumbled mess. The biggest difference here is the grandmother's plot. It makes so much more sense for things to be set up the way that they are in HHA. HoA is completely ridiculous in the way of just throwing in an elderly woman outside of the school's gate waiting for Nina. Or the house's gate. I mean, she claims that it is the school gate, but I'm honestly not sure that it is. And we never really get to question Sarah because she seems like just a trapped person and not a possibly insane one. The setup for the mystery is so much better in HHA because they actually take the time to set things up with a darker undertone that HoA just doesn't have, and it just forces information down our throats in hopes that it works as a hook, which it doesn't really do in my opinion. I also really like the bright personality of Nyenke's grandmother. She's just such a pleasant character, even if we don't see her that much. What I do like in HoA is Alfie. He isn't being mean to Nina like Api is to Nyenke, he's just there to do a bit of mischief. Also, Jerome is better than Jeroen already for multiple obvious reasons. It's also nice to see the bromance of Alfie and Jerome more, which we don't get that much sense of in HHA so far. Patricia in HoA is awfully desperate and it feels like she's going to cry soon from how hopeless she feels. While in HHA, Patricia is going to war. Which one is better? Honestly, I'm not sure. HHA just seems like a grittier and darker series because of all the drama and the bitterness, which HoA handles much lighter. I think which one is better in that case comes down to what you generally prefer and want to watch. That's all I wanted to say. I just can't get over how HoA just threw an elderly lady near the school, which still looks to me like the Anubis building, and called it a day because they decided to make Nina American and not have her bring her grandma with her. Which, by the way, she doesn't have any relatives in the UK either, I'm pretty sure, so she's just sent all alone to a different country, to a boarding school, away from her only caretaker. This is honestly quite a weird choice, as her being American is not really adding much to the story either. except maybe making Patricia low-key xenophobic.